hello again, and welcome again to another episode of Down to Earth but Heavenly Minded. And I'm your host, Risch. You're listening to Internet Radio. And our show today is going to be the continuation where we left off last time in the book of Joshua. And we're in session 4, I believe it is. But we're in Joshua 3. You know, many times we, as Christians, bless one another or give our blessings. But today we're going to be looking at the way to blessings. And it's found in Joshua 3. Now, with that said, let us just start our session here. Chapter 3 is the story of the momentum crossing of the Jordan by Israel. This was one of the great days in the long history. They crossed from the wilderness, where they had wandered for 40 years, into the land of Canaan. This crossing of the Jordan does not illustrate the passing of the soul into eternity, but rather illustrates the passing of the Christian from one level of Christian life to another. It makes an end to the self-life and the beginning of the Christ life. Between these two levels lie the Jordan, which we might well call the river of impossibilities. It is now your feel. It is not. Is this how you feel? That the odds are too great for me to obtain a higher spiritual level of Christian living. Ephesians 1, spiritual blessings. Consider now the portion of Israel in the wilderness side of the Jordan, 2.5 million people standing before the river. It was harvest time, which means that the river was in flood. It had swallowed to twice the size. It swelled to twice its size. Consider some of the questions which could have filled some of their hearts. In Joshua 3:11, behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and all the earth passeth over before you into Jordan. The ark was the symbol of the presence of God. It is mentioned 10 times in chapter 3. Joshua said the ark will go before you. Describe the priest carrying the ark. They approached within a yard of it, and nothing happened. But as their foot touched the water, it rolled back by the mighty hand of God. And the priest walked into the bed of the river on dry ground. You know, the priest remained in the riverbed with the ark. They stood firm on dry ground until all the people of Israel were passing clean over the Jordan. It is possible that some of you have aspired for a deeper or higher spiritual life. But the river Jordan, the river is impossible, lies between you and longing and this realization. As you look at the river, many of you hear the words, I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Joshua 1:5. As thou goest step by step, the way will open up before thee. Abraham in Genesis 12. Now the Lord said to Abraham, get thee out of the country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land which I will show thee. Gideon, Sarah, and Abraham, Bethlehem, where Christ was born, Calvary, where we die with Christ, Pentecost, where the Holy Spirit comes and takes control. You know, Joshua 3:11, behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth passeth over before you into Jordan. The Lord of all the earth. This is the God who has promised to be with us today. I will be with you. I will not fail you, nor forsake you. Joshua 1:5. Present-day application, no matter the trial or the circumstances, the Lord has gone before. He sweetens every bitter cup. He strengthens the feeble arm for the fight. He makes the cowardly spirit brave. He even guides the bed of death with light. Well, describes the thought of the 2.5 million as they stood by the flooded river, the river of impossibility. Now their attention is being diverted and centered on the Lord. Double and fear have vanished, and in their place is joy and confidence. You know, the practical lesson are our problems and difficulties impossible. As we contemplate the moving from the self-life to the Christ-life, does it seem impossible? Turn your eyes upon Jesus. As the song says, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. You know, one day he went into Gethsemane. Then on the cross, he died and was put in a tomb, and a huge stone was put at the entrance. But he overcame all that. He arose the third day triumphant over all his foes. Paul wrote that in doing so, he spoiled principalities and powers and made a show of them openly, triumphant over them. Galatians 2:15. Look now at the victorious Christ, victorious over Satan, death, hell, and the grave. The way to spiritual victory for the child of God is a deep appreciation of the risen Christ, who placed his unlimited powers at our disposal. Peter walked on the sea, Matthew 14, his disciples, Matthew 8. As the Christians have you been wandering in the wilderness till now? Has your Christian life been a disappointment this far? You understand God's will for you and how you long for its realization in your life. But there lies the river of impossibility, the self-pride, flesh, and defeat. Might I encourage you to advance? Put your foot in the water. They will separate for you, just as they did for Israel. 3:15 and 16. If you do this experience could be described as immersion from the self-life into the Christ life. It means leaving the life of defeat in the wilderness for the life of victory in the Lord. The royal road to blessings is to keep your eye on the Lord. Chapters 4 and 5. Israel is now in the promised land. Note how God keeps them from immediately conflicting with their enemy. You know, there will still be more preparation. That wasn't the time for them. The first step to progression in the land was accomplished. the crossing of the Jordan. 2. Then they encamped in Gilgal. God had a great lesson to teach them at Gilgal. Remember from whence they came, resurrection and memorial, remuneration, cutting away the flesh, restoration, the Passover, realization, the manna ceased, and they ate the old corn of the land. Revelation, the divine captain reveals himself to Joshua, 13:15. Consider the fact that God did not allow them to go immediately into conflict. There was still some preparation. The first indispensable step to possessing the land was they must cross the Jordan, death and resurrection. Then in verses 2 and 9, it is recorded of what took place at Gilgal, the circumstances of Israel. The Passover had only been observed twice since they were delivered from Egypt. The Passover in Egypt and the Passover on Mount Sinai. Since then, there had been no Passover held. No one could partake of the Passover until they were circumcised. Exodus 12:48. The moment they obeyed, literally the circumstances, they held the feast of the Passover. They kept it in the plains of Jordan, right under the nose of Satan. And don't we do the same thing today? We partake of the Lord's table. We're in enemy's territory, right under his nose. Well, with that said, let us end our reading today. And this is the end of our session.